What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. In today's video, I want to be talking about the NFL trade deadline. The NFL trade deadline is just 6 weeks away. It's on November 1st. I want to be talking about some trade, targets the Bengals should be going after as we get closer to the trade deadline. Obviously, with the Bengals' impressive start these past couple of weeks, winning against the Falcons, Burrow having over 500 yards and having an impressive win against the Saints. The Bengals are now 4-3. And they look now like how we kind of thought they were heading into the season. So let's look at some of these, people I think the Bengals should target as we get closer to the 2022 trade deadline. Up first is a popular name that lots of people want the Bengals to get. And, I really agree with them. And it's Carolina Panthers wide receiver Terrence Marshall Jr. Terrence Marshall Jr., was a second-round pick in a 2021 draft, drafted by the Carolina Panthers. When Joe Burrow's spectacular, 2019 campaign with LSU, Terrence Marshall Jr. was actually part of the LSU team, and he was a big, a part of that offense. He had 46 receptions, 671 yards, and 13 touchdowns. The following season, in the 2020 year, Marshall played with LSU, but in just 7 games, he had 48 receptions, 731 yards, and 10 touchdowns. When you look at Marshall, this season and last season, throughout his NFL career so far, he's only had 38 targets and 23 receptions. He has just 6 receptions this season. And when you look at the Panthers already traded Christian McCaffrey. They already traded Robbie Anderson. There's talks they might trade DJ Moore. If they're willing to trade those people, they're definitely willing to trade Terrence Marshall Jr., a guy who has still not really been able to find his place in the offense yet. Makes a lot of sense for the Bengals. Let's say trade a 4th-round pick or something like that. I would do that in a heartbeat. I think the Panthers would definitely like to acquire draft assets instead of Marshall, because this is the team who's going to be rebuilding. Terrence Marshall Jr. to Cincinnati, to me, out of these 5 people I'm going to be talking about, 100% makes the most sense. The Bengals go after and possibly trade to get before the NFL trade deadline on Tuesday. Somebody else I think is kind of slipped under the radar a little bit is Washington Commanders defensive tackle Duron Payne. And when you look at DJ Reader, you can tell his absence, when he's not in the field. The Bengals defense aren't quite as good. But J2 Feely, some of these other guys, BJ Hill, they've been stepping up. They've been playing great. But, Duron Payne, to me, he's a guy who, is going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And to me, this is more of a just have extra depth at, defense tackle position. Payne has 24 tackles and 3.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback hits, and a safety this season. Like I said, he's in the contract year, so he'll be a free agent at the end of the season. He has 251 tackles, 27 tackles for loss, 45 quarterback hits, and 18 sacks in his career. I don't think this would be a bad pickup at all for Cincinnati. I think it would make sense. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I saw Washington would want a 2nd or 3rd-round pick. If it's something like that, I would pass on that. But if they wanted the 4th-round pick, I would be more than willing to give up a 4th-round pick to acquire a defensive tackle like Duron Payne's caliber. So as we continue here, kind of already talking about Terrence Marshall Jr. and Duron Payne. This one hasn't been talked about much at all. I personally would love this as it happens. When you look at Joe Burrow, obviously he's been, he was hurt like a year or so ago, and he kind of got, hurt in a couple of games last season during the game, but he continued to finish the game. I don't want to see a situation where Joe Burrow gets hurt and we have to see Brandon Allen as our quarterback, because the second Brandon Allen is our starter and he's on the game for us and in the game playing instead of Joe Burrow, I'm concerned. When you look at last season, week 17, we definitely could have beat the Browns, final game of the season. But, Allen was just very, very bad. To me, I think the Bengals should trade to get a better backup quarterback. Why don't trade for one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL and Gardner Minsh? He's with the Eagles right now. He's also on a contract deal. And, I think the Eagles would be willing to let him go for, a late-round pick because, obviously Jalen Hurts has been playing very, very well this season. And the Eagles are the only remaining undefeated team in the NFL. So, when they acquired, Minshew a year or so ago, it was more of a quarterback competition to get the best out of Hurts. And that's, obviously what happened. Hurts is playing the best football of his career right now. Minshew, he's played 27 games. He started 22. He's 8 of 14 as a starter, 63 completion percentage, nearly 6,000 pass yards, 41 touchdowns, and just 12 interceptions. Like I said, he's in the contract year, so he'll be a free agent at the end of the season. And this is one of those deals to me. I would love it if Cincinnati would trade like a 6th-round pick to get Minshew and then, sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal, once free agency hits, because I think he could be a nice backup for Joe Burrow. And I think when you look at backup quarterbacks right now, he's probably the most likely you could get and probably the best one you can get, because he's not going to get this, big money for a backup quarterback like some of these other guys will. But Gardner Minshew, to me, I think would be a great trade for Cincinnati. They ended up doing it because I really think backup quarterback is one of the most important positions in the NFL, and I do not want to see this offense just absolutely be non-existent without Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow gets hurt and we have Minshew, obviously the offense will decline in play, but I don't think it's going to decline in play as much as if Brendan Allen were playing instead. Now, these next two, this last one especially is not likely, but this next one here, this is very interesting. This is somebody I wanted the Bengals to draft just a year or so ago. That is Giants wide receiver Kadarius Tony. When you look at this Giants team, they are playing out of their mind right now. They're playing great football. When they drafted Wan'Dale Robinson from Kentucky, it was kind of a head scratcher because he's basically the exact same player Kadarius Tony is. Kadarius Tony's not been able to stay on the field this season for the New York Giants. He has just 2 receptions this year for 0 yards. It's absolutely crazy. He was a first-round pick last season. He has 39 receptions for 420 yards last season. We're talking about Kadarius Tony, a first-round pick last season, is still trying to get his first, receiving touchdown in the NFL. It just doesn't seem like Kadarius Tony's, time with New York is going to be much longer. If I'm the Bengals, I would 100% trade a 3rd-round pick for Tony. I obviously would not trade a 1st or a 2nd. 3rd would be the absolute most I'd be willing to give up. And we've already seen this, the Bengals and Giants trade before. Look at last season. We traded Billy Price and we acquired B.J. Hill. Obviously, that trade worked out so well for us. One of the better trades in franchise history. So we were able to do, let's say a 3rd-round pick for Tony. Lots of people are talking about, we need a true wide receiver number 4. I already kind of talked about Terrence Marshall Jr. That's much more likely than this to happen. But either one of those guys, I would absolutely love it if the Bengals got it. Because when you have Chase, Boyd, Higgins, and then you add, Terrence Marshall Jr. or Tony, with Hayden Hurst, who's been impressive so far, mixing out of the backfield. He can, catch some passes or run for a decent amount of yards as well. I think either one of these guys would be great to the Bengals to pick up before the trade deadline on Tuesday. And this one, right, honestly, is not really realistic. I would love for it to happen. Crazier things have happened, but of all the ones here, this is probably not going to happen. I would absolutely love it if the Bengals trade for Kyle Pitts. And I know Kyle Pitts will probably not be traded. But when you look at it, Kyle Pitts in just 6 games for the Atlanta Falcons has like 16 receptions. It's something absolutely ridiculous that should never happen for a amazing player like Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was considered, the best tight end prospect coming out of the draft, last season when he came out with Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, Slater, and all those guys. But you wouldn't know it because his lack of production, because, the Falcons are not involving him in their offense like they should. When you look at Kyle Pitts, last season, he had over 1,000 receiving yards. He has 178 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Last season, he had 68 receptions, 1,000 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. When you have Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Burrow with Joe Mixon, that would be just absolutely insane. And I would 100% be willing to give up a 1st-round pick for Kyle Pitts. I would give up a 1st-round pick and let's say a 4th-round pick as well. And I don't think it's going to happen, but we've seen crazier things. Look at the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins traded Minkah Fitzpatrick just in his 2nd season. He was a 1st-round pick. They traded him to the Steelers for a 1st-round pick. And look how great he's doing with Pittsburgh now. Arguably the best safety in the NFL. So when you look at that, I would love, a Pitts trade. Is it likely? Absolutely not. But, wow, that would just be absolutely amazing for the team in this offense. And something else with Kyle Pitts and even, I mentioned Kadarius Tony. Both these players were 1st-round picks, which means they have a 5th-year option. So opposed to, Gardner Minsh and Duron Payne, like I mentioned, who are both on the contract year, and, Terrence Marshall Jr. after this season has 2 years on his contract left. Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Tony have up to 3 years left if you use their 5th-year option. So I think that's something else to possibly look at if you're wanting to trade and maybe looking into a trade to get one of these 2 guys. But the trade deadline is on Tuesday. I really hope the Bengals trade for somebody who can really help this team even more. Take us over the next hump and make us the best team in the NFL, and hopefully we can go back to the Super Bowl this season. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what players you want the Bengals to try to trade for as we get closer to the trade deadline on November 1st on Tuesday. That about does it for this video. If you're new to the channel or seen videos before, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hines Show.